Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Three Commoners. We're really excited for this one, like super excited as we've never ever been before. We have like one of our most requested guests from friends, family, other commoners.
Family?
I mean, family of the,
Okay, family of the
Three
podcast.
Commoners of the
Okay.
podcast
Yes,
now.
yes, yes,
People have
yes,
been
yes.
saying like we should talk to him,
Yeah,
and
he's
he's just
very,
like
very, very
specially
popular,
requested,
very, very
very popular by
recommended, very
popular request.
requested by popular request.
You guys are
And
making me feel so super cool, man. Like
so
one upcoming
Your
celebrity.
fans will be very, very happy that we're able to get you here today. But yeah, today we have a very special guest. And before he introduces himself, I'm going to try my best to introduce him. And I don't think I'm going to do it justice because this is a very, very loaded resume, if I do say so myself. But we have Dr. Wale Oyebanji on the podcast today. Dr. Wale is a friend.
See, that worked.
Okay, it worked, yeah. But Dr. Wale is a friend. Dr. Wale and I met on an app called Clubhouse. And we've been friends ever since. But that's sidelines. The real gist is Dr. Wale is a medical doctor. He's a graduate of Windsor University. He's also an MBA degree holder from Temple University.
Same on now, please.
So Wale is also a Master's of Public Health holder from Imperial College London. Are you guys seeing where things are going with this? So
well read.
Very well read and respectable member of society, who has made the transition from working as a doctor to being in pharmacy. So he's now one of the big boys in pharma. So you know how that goes. He says that's where the money is. So we're trying to tap his brain and see how we can all get into that pharma money. Dr. Wale is also a husband and a father of 2 amazing children. So welcome to the podcast, Dr. Wale.
Thank you, Vanessa and Simon. Appreciate it.
I hope I did justice. I don't think I did.
You did.
We tried to, get a little subsect of who you are. But yeah, Dr. Wale, welcome to the podcast. How does it feel to be here with us today?
No, it's pretty exciting, and thank you for inviting me. It feels good to be with friends, to chat and then talk through stuff. So looking forward to the experience with you guys today.
We're very happy you're here, Dr.
We're
Wale.
very happy to have you here.
Thank you, likewise.
I know I gave a very brief summation of like, oh, you went to school here or whatever, but do you want to do us the honors of just giving us like a brief background of like your career, like how you see, if they said, oh, Dr. Wale, give us your 10-minute, 5-minute intro pitch, who are you? What would you tell us?
I mean, like I'm an upcoming guy, hustling down the street. But hey, in summary, I think you did justice to it. You kind of talked a little bit about my, educational background. I studied medical school from Igbinedion actually, and then transferred over to Windsor University in the Caribbean, and then finished med school, and then moved back to Nigeria. Practiced for about 7-8 years in private practice. Worked with Lagos State government as well on the Lagos State Primary Healthcare Board. One of the health centers in Ikoyi, did a lot of projects with the state government, started this health volunteer scheme that were trying to get graduates that were, unemployed but employable and put them in different primary healthcare centers to kind of work within the health systems at, as health advisors, supporting the physicians and healthcare providers within that particular institutions. I work with a company called Adanda Consulting. So it was a healthcare consulting firm that was, attracting healthcare investors who were interested in the sub-Saharan market. We're trying to build like diagnostic centers, or comprehensive primary healthcare centers and all of that across board. So we'll typically be at the conference or meeting called Healthcare Business International in London. And then there were a lot of European investors who were thinking about, setting up a practice in Nigeria. So I did that for a while. I also work with a company called Codex Pharma. I was a regional manager in charge of the whole Southwest, and they were big on the rapid diagnostic test kits. And so, your regular malaria test kits or the ones for typhoid and all of that. So having a lot of the commissioners of health, get these products and put them in their different primary healthcare centers. It's quite expensive and we don't have enough personnel to, look through the lab and go through like the microscopes and all of that for diagnosis of some of the diseases. But there may be other alternatives that that has high, specificity rate, and you can also be able to make that diagnosis on a timely manner to be able to aid the treatment of patients as well. So did that for a way. Codex is now really big, literally where one of the folks that were in charge of providing the test kits for COVID as well, right? So did that. And then the fun part, I also worked in the media space with Cool FM Wazobia at some point in time. I
Yes.
started a medical talk show with my friends. We will call it We the Doctors. So it was like four of us, and we
Oh.
had like a couple of sessions on YouTube as well that was recorded. We were talking about the different indices of healthy living, demystifying myths around healthcare behaviors and practices. So did all of that for a couple of years, and I kind of enjoyed the business side of healthcare, and decided that I wanted to get an MBA with a concentration in healthcare management. So I did get that up at Fox School of Business in Temple. When I finished that, I worked at Penn Medicine for about a year in the primary care service line, and then started the master's program. I think in 2020 when the whole COVID pandemic kind of started up. So initially, my previous career, like most doctors, want to do MPH at some point in time. So I think back in 2012, I had admission at UCL, but for some reason I couldn't do that. So that whole the pandemic situation and everyone was thinking about how we getting out of this kind of reignited that passion. So I decided that I wanted to go back to school, and I did that. But whilst doing that, I was working at AstraZeneca. That was where I first, started my career in pharma. Worked with them for 6 years, left just in October of last year. I was medical director for immuno-oncology portfolio focused on thoracic oncology. Yes, the lung cancer in summary. We're currently now with Johnson & Johnson as group medical director for bladder cancer.
This is super impressive. Even way more impressive than we could ever.
We thought
No.
exactly.
It's
That we
all,
could ever
it's all
imagine.
packaging at the end of the day.
This is like
Sounds like
super
Dr. Wale has
impressive.
lived like 10 lives in one
I'm
person's
telling you.
lifetime. Like he has been on radio, done Lagos State government, this, that one, he has done, it's all impressive, very impressive.
Let's
Very
right
impressive.
click on your switch to into the US, like the whole thing, deciding to move here. Because I just listening to you had like an impressive career already in the US, in Nigeria. I mean, Nigeria bad. Yes, we get that, but like you guys were doing things like Codex, the testing that I've used Codex in Nigeria, so that's how I know like it's not like a small time operation or something. So like, what like made you decide like let me try this US side?
No, that's a great question. So, so at some point I was working fully with Lagos State Primary Healthcare Board. I was one of the medical officers in the Primary Healthcare Center in Ikoyi or Balende. So I used to live in Parkview then, and so to the office then it was probably like a 5-10 minutes drive for me. And then I had gone for a friend's wedding. So then we had I'd just gone for a friend's wedding in America, in Atlanta, in October. So I just came back to work, and Monday morning I got a letter saying that they were moving me from that health center to another health center in Ikosi Ejiri. I'm sure you've never heard that before.
Where's
But that's
that?
somewhere between somewhere in Nekpe, right? So between Nekpe and getting into
Ooh.
Ikorodu, somewhere very remote. So then there was a new government, right? So we had Fashola had just left the government. I think that was in 2016, yeah. So we had a new governor, right? Ambody and all of that. And so a lot of my work previously was with the former SA on health. And so I felt maybe it was some political target or conversation around that. So I did reach out to the woman that was in charge of the primary healthcare board at the time and had conversations like, come on, the whole importance of primary healthcare is also access, right? It's one of the core components of, primary healthcare, affordability, access on all of the 5 A's, right? And so it's not access just for the patient, it's access for the providers. If it's going to take me 2.5 hours to be going to work every day, it doesn't make sense. But they were like, this is government work. You have to obey before complain and all of that. I did a drive to that place, really, it was like 2.5 hours. I was like, nah, there's no way I can do this. So, I mean, had some people talk to her on my behalf and all of that, but she was kind of still thinking through it. And again, there were 3 of us in that health center. I was the last person to join. So why is it going to be a life or last in first out kind of scenario, right? So, I mean, ideally, you probably even think about the people that have been there for a couple more years before myself. So then, at that time, I think dollar was just around maybe 500 or something ridiculous. And I was just trying to convert this salary in dollars. And I'm like, these people are stressing me out for maybe $600 or $500 work. I was like, you know what? I'm done with this nonsense. And I randomly had met a friend just a few weeks ago. We went to med school together, and he was on his way. So I saw him in Lagos. He was just about leaving to go do an MBA in healthcare management at Northeastern. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. I probably should consider it. So in the midst of that whole drama that they were stressing me out, I just Googled MBA. So that was in November, right? So I just literally Googled MBA healthcare management January start. So found a couple of schools, applied, got an admission. So by this time, Lagos State now brought me back and said they were sorry that I think somebody had spoken to the lady and they were like, oh, I can go back to my primary healthcare center. I just said, no, I'm done. This is total nonsense. Like, and that was it. And that's how I left February 2nd, 2017. I just carried my kaya and then just left, and that was it.
That's interesting. So if that transfer had not happened, do you think that there would have been a catalyst for you to leave Nigeria?
I don't think so. I was very comfortable. I was very happy being in Nigeria. I remember I went to med school, right, in Caribbean. All my friends and folks that we went to med school together literally came to America to do residency. That was not a path for me to begin with. And
You're
I've
just
been
not
coming to America
interested,
for like forever. I never spent more than 1 week. And in fact, when I started business school, I remember joking around with my Nigerian friends. I'm like, what are you guys doing? When you finish, you go back to Nigeria. They were like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, why you want to stay in this country? There's a lot more opportunities in Nigeria. You can do this, you can do that. And they're like, Chebi, you just came. I'm like, no, I've been coming. They say, no, have you stayed here for like 6 months and understand? So now I understood what they meant by stay very big. And then I was just like, you know what? It's been nice doing business, you know. And then because you understand the whole drama with dealing with people is a lot of stress sometimes in Nigeria, right? And the whole, bureaucracy and the craziness and managing people's ego and all of that with stuff. And you're like, you know what? I think there's more to life than dealing with this.
So was there a point where, like, during that master's program where you're like, okay, I've understood, like, I'm going to stay here? Was there like, or was it like the offers were just coming and you just couldn't say no?
No, the offer was good, but there was also a bit of it where I felt like, you know what it is. So I give an example where I had an offer with AstraZeneca at that time, and it was contingent on, it was a lot of drama to get to that. So it's another very interesting story. But again, one thing was sure, there was going to be the H-1B lottery system, right? Where companies would, have to submit your application for you to get a work visa. And then I remember then that my friends would be like, dude, if you don't get this H-1B visa, you would have to leave the country in a couple of months and all of that. Well, are you going to jeopardize this opportunity that you have? These guys are going to pay you well. How about maybe you go and do RNG or do something and all that kind of stuff?
Money in the meantime.
Yeah, so that you can secure your status from an immigration perspective, so that you don't lose this job. Because if you don't get into this lottery, that's it. And I'm like, it's not that deep. If I don't get it, I'll go back to Nigeria. They're not pushing me at home. There'll always be opportunities and all of that. But I mean, thank God everything went well. At the end of the day, got the H-1B visa, got picked in the first time and all of that, and everything was good with that. But
God's
the point is that just understanding
that H-1B, people they struggle.
I know.
And
Thank God.
The first time, wow, God's favorite for real.
I know. We thank God. But I mean, it was just the point of the fact that, you understand that you're in a sane environment. You can really get to what you want. You can aspire to be anything. And obviously relationships matter everywhere in the world, right? But at least you know that if you do your own part, you work hard, you build right relationship, people are willing and able to support you. You're not trying to rob it. You're not buying anybody a bag of rice or buying them a Ferragamo shoe or buying them a brand new phone because you want some form of, favor. Someone should just even do their work. You don't have to kind of sugarcoat and all of that kind of stuff. So I was like, you know what, it's okay. Time to just move forward and all that. Yeah, and that's the beauty of globalization, right? At the end of the day.
Did you choose the MBA because you were like, okay, I'm tired of this medicine thing I've been doing in Nigeria. Let's see what the business side of it looks like, or was it just kind of like what was driving that generally?
So I think there are a couple of things. So first of all, I think was from a physician perspective, most medical doctors, their typical career path, if they're going to do any postgraduate degree or master's, is master's in public health. So that was one thing I had wanted to do at some point in time, but I couldn't have the time to do it. And again, with the whole pandemic thing happened, I ended up doing it again. But I know years back when I was in high school in King's College, there was this Ovation magazine I was reading about a lady called Tina Vokokwashe. She was a pharmacist. And then I think she was at 35, she was like an executive director in one of the banks, in Zenith Bank or something like that. And then she was a pharmacist that had an MBA degree. And so that had spurred my interest in, the career transitioning from healthcare as a physician or a pharmacist, and then having an MBA and all of that. So I've always kind of, thought about that idea of some point in time getting to the business side of healthcare and wanting to do that. And then, so when this whole drama with the state government had happened, and I had just, I saw one of my friends, we went to school together, who was going to do an MBA, but a concentration in healthcare management made me feel a lot more comfortable about, oh, so there could be something that brings that business side, but also ties in the healthcare piece into it. So at that point in time was when I made that decision. I was like, I think this is going to be interesting for me. I love the business side of healthcare anyways. And so I'm getting that, core knowledge and experience and expertise in that space. And I'm also tying it to the healthcare piece as well.
That's very interesting that you say that, right? Because I find when I talk to a lot of Nigerian doctors in Nigeria and they're trying to japa, I feel like everybody's thought process is like, oh, like
Can I be
especially
a
for
doctor?
younger people, yeah, how do I come and do residency in the US, or how do I come and do medical? I think everybody's still focused on that traditional medical trajectory of actually practicing everyday medicine. But this is another way for you to japa from the country and potentially pivot careers, or gives you the opportunity to japa without the stress of writing all those exams, right? That you have to write to still practice medicine. In your case, did you ever like at any point think like, okay, let me write the exams to like be board certified in the US? Or once you just found this pharma thing, you were like, let's go.
No, I never thought about writing the exam. It was just never my thing. That was one of the reasons why I even moved to Nigeria. The only exam I wrote was the exam to practice in Nigeria. And that was it. So even PLAB to go to UK to go and write or write USMA, I was done with all of that kind of stress.
You're
Now,
done.
when I started the MBA, the initial career path I wanted to go was to be a healthcare leader. So I had one of my classmates that were in class together. There was a guy that was his mentor. So not like he knew the guy directly, but he was aspiring to be that guy. Was a guy called Bernard Tyson. At that time, the guy is late now. He was the CEO of Kaiser Permanente. The guy's salary was about $7 million thereabout in a year. There's no medicine that would have given me. So you understand what I'm saying? So, and then when I worked at Penn Medicine, my mentor and friend, he was actually one who helped me get into Penn. He was my professor at school. He's the current CEO of Penn, Kevin Mahoney. It was really been a really good friend and very instrumental in helping me in that career path and all of that. But if you Google the salary and all of that, base salary, we're talking about $5-6 million. These are people that are not doctors. These are mostly folks that had masters in healthcare administration, right? And they are running health system and leading this health system. There was a lady that was working with them and when I was in the primary care service line, she was the COO of the primary care service line in Penn. She had a master's in health administration and maybe a master's in public health or something like that. She was controlling all of the doctors in the whole primary care, family medicine, internal
And
medicine,
not
and all of that.
not one
She was
medical
getting
degree.
yes, and not one medical degree, and she was getting paid almost like 800 grand and all of that as base, right? And then not talk of the bonuses and all of that. And these doctors will work shift to do all of the stress and maybe getting 180, 200 to whatever it is, right? Because again, that's the first health center in the US and was a big one. Everybody wants to be at that particular place. So by just understanding this kind of life and then thinking about what kind of life do you want to live? Do you want to, help bring your medical expertise and the business component to it to run a health system to even be the best healthcare system, right? And this really, at the end of the day, that's what medicine is all about, right? At the end of the day, because again, how do we improve outcomes for patients? How we do reduce physician burnout? Tying all of that together, right? And thinking about they call it triple A or AIM or quadruple aim now. I think they've added a fourth component to it. So those were the key things that I was thinking about first, and then I now found the opportunity in pharma, and then just decided to join. But again, it was more from thinking about improving outcomes for patients, improving lives, making sure that the healthcare system is better, or versus sitting down in one practice in your local community and just knowing few people that will know you, versus what are you doing at the national or at the global level.
I think that broad thinking that you mentioned. Sorry,
I want to say something to the doctors. No, if a doctor is listening to this, because I know some doctors we don't write USML a few times, they never pass.
It's passion. It's passion. Some of them want to be.
Yes, but some of them, the passion to
the
japa
passion is
has now
japa actually
overridden the passion to practice the medicine. So if you still want to japa and you want it to still be in the medical line, hey, listen, it's an option, right? And maybe when you stabilize or whatever, you can still go back and write to USML. They don't go pity if you write it at the age of 40. But just saying, Sha, if your passion to japa has overridden your passion to practice medicine, this is a route that you can use. And then when you figure yourself out, maybe you'll be making 7 million now. You'll be like, who won't practice medicine when I'm
I know,
making
right?
yeah, no, no.
Some of us that are even laymen, we might not even understand. I've heard of like I don't say like the pathway to being a doctor from another country, especially Nigeria or whatever, or even in the US. Some people don't quite understand that pathway as well. Like, what is that too? Like, so people can even see like, oh, it's not actually quite beans. People think about doctors like, oh, they're making so much money, but they don't remember like that whole thing getting up there. Whereas like yours, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not. I don't think it's as intense, at least.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, and I think that again, it also comes from what your interest lies at, right? So some people are really passionate about certain things, right? Some people really love, that patient interaction. Sometimes I miss it, right? Sometimes it makes you feel good when somebody comes in with one issue or the other and you're able to kind of help, right? Resolve it, and the patient is leaving really feeling fulfilled, feeling happy, feeling excited. There's this sense of fulfillment that it brings in you as a physician, right? That you're able to kind of help that your patient, right? And so some people really like that. They want to be pediatrician, they want to be gynecologists, they want to be medical oncologists, they want to be radiation oncologists,
Mhm.
name it, right?
Mm.
And some other people also kind of think about, I mean, I personally think about more about impacting the world in general, right? So thinking about healthcare policies, how do we think about improvement in screening? How do we think about improving, bringing the best therapy to even cure cancer, potentially, and all of that, things like that at the global level. I'm pushing towards that. Now, for a typical physician, right? And in America, it's different. In Nigeria, it's different. Nigeria, you can go directly to medical school. Here, I think you have to do, your first degree as well, in anything, and then getting into med school, which is about another 4 years, and then you do residency program, which would be 4 or 5 years, depending on the specialty, and then you're also doing like fellowship with that. It's a lot of work. It's very intense. A lot of reading, a lot of exams that you have to write, right? And even when practicing as well, you always hear the physician burnout is a thing, right? Because there's a lot that they have to do, paperwork as well as, managing patients, and, access to care is always a challenge because of that too. So it's totally understandable why, they get well paid, because again, if you think about the
Mm.
student loan that they also
It's a
acquire
lot.
while doing this as well, it's just a whole lot at the end of the day.
Mhm.
Mm. So if you had and just in case like the younger people that are watching this, what would your advice be for like young med school students, wherever they are going to school, whether they're going to school in the Caribbean, which is really big now for a lot of Nigerians, going to school in the
Mhm.
Caribbean and hungry, or they're in school in Nigeria, particularly,
Mhm.
like what would your advice be to them, given that luckily you went to school in Nigeria, you went to school in the Caribbean,
You
so you
did
kind of have
both.
an experience of both, and you've now worked in Nigeria for a few years and now work in the US. What would your advice be to young medical students, like Nigerian medical students, wherever they are right now?
I think my core advice would be that, one, they're open minded as they think about
Mm.
their career. And I know that a lot of people, from peer pressure, you might feel like,
Mhm.
my mates are going to become this and I'm not doing this, and it makes me feel like I haven't made it, right? You have to make sure that you are true to yourself. You're following your own
Mm.
passion, what you believe in, and what you really want for yourself at the end of the day. Because you can be that specialist and you may still feel unfulfilled, be feel
Mm.
burned out, and be sure that you're not doing it to please your parents, or you're not doing it for you to show off to your friends and make it seem like you've been that person that, everybody is. Because beyond that, you're going to go back to yourself, and you're going to be by yourself and thinking through about the life that you live, and be sure that, you feel fulfilled, one, and you feel satisfied, and you're excited about what you're doing. So I think it's important that you're true to yourself about the rationale behind why you're doing what you're doing. We talked about being open-minded in the sense that if certain things are not going the way you want them to be, are you agile enough to kind of take advantage of other opportunities
Mhm.
that might also help you get to where you want to go to, or might provide other opportunities for you to be able to leverage your skill sets, right, towards that.
Mm.
And then the other thing is, what I've realized, I mean, from friends that we went to med school together, at the end of the day, is that, nobody knows tomorrow. The future is really all over the place. And
Mhm.
what you see today does not necessarily guarantee that. I had friends where in school, they were like the top 1% of the class, really bright, really smart folks. Afterwards went to like, top Ivy League schools and all of that. And they have a different career path right now, out of the whole medical school thing. And they're still thriving, doing their own thing. But I think at some point in time, they will also be able to realize that if things are not going the way they want, they've been able to kind of pivot themselves into different career paths as well. So again, it's just being open-minded, willing to learn new things, being agile, and just being true to yourself and understanding what your core passion is and following that through.
Okay. Just to stay a
Sound
bit on
advice.
the um I guess advice, mentorship, that whole thing about like, being in the US. And I know you're like somewhat involved in mentoring younger people, or at least finding paths for like how to succeed in like, and you yourself, you kind of mentioned like you've had like mentors in the whilst you've been, should I call them, the healthcare space, like right now. What's been your like, what have you seen in terms of like networking that's been able to get you this way, or like DEI, or like just like general advice on like career growth in that sector, as like someone who's come fresh from Nigeria or from Africa or whatever, or someone who's young, just pulling up at trying to get a job, like what is the best way or whatever?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think there are different components to it. I think one first, the low hanging fruit that I would even start with is, as easy as LinkedIn, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that if you find people who are currently in a career path that you like and you aspire to be, it's okay to reach out to them and ask them for like an informational interview. And
Mm-hmm.
just say you just want to connect with them. How did you get to where you are? You know,
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing right now. I just wanted to learn about it. So I give an example. There was when I first just moved to the US and started, there was a guy he's currently the chief medical officer at Ernst& Young. His name is Dr. Yele Aluko. He's Nigerian as well. He went to King's College, thankfully, so I could leverage from that to just kind of reach out to him. And we spent a lot of time just kind of talking about his career journey. He was an interventional cardiologist that pivoted from cardiology into the consulting piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so reaching out to him and just kind of learning a lot from him. So I did a lot of that, speaking to different people who had different phases in their career, just understanding how they got to where they got to and all of that. And a lot of them are always willing to kind of introduce you to someone else,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that that's also one key part. The other thing, when you early on in your career, you just started, I think you can block some time on your calendar once every week, maybe Fridays, right? And just try to meet someone new within your organization. Put time on their calendar, just try to get to know them. Don't make it transactional. Try to know them at a personal level, understand how they got to where they got to. And you can ask them to introduce you to 5 people within the network. And then that's how people get to build that relationship and all of that too. The other one is, we're blacks at the end of the day, right? So there are key professional societies or meetings that may be very helpful. So there's something called Young Black Farmer, for example, right? That I try to attend. There's the National Black MBA, there's the National
Mm-hmm.
Black Society for Engineers, a couple of all of these organizations that you can be part of. Attend some of those conferences, meet people that are senior leaders and all of that within that space. Connect with them, ask, build that relationship with them, gradually get to know them better before maybe asking them to mentor you and all of that. And then with time, that's how you identify even sponsors, that will be willing to speak about you at key rooms or key meetings and just say, I know this guy, I know his work, I think he will be a good person, and the ideal person for this particular role.
I think some people never think about those soft skills or soft things that people have to do, because when you're in Nigeria, you're like, oh, one, read your books all the time. Two, like pray to God all
Yes.
the time. And once you do those two, everything will be all right. But people forget like just those soft skills of talking to people, networking, being able to like even just be personable, like really goes a long way in building a career when you're young, or probably forever actually. So yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes we're always thinking about what can I get out from this person? Like, I
Mhm.
just need this. Can this person help me? Is this person in my career part, or is this someone that you think will be useful to me and all of that? But I think it's beyond that, because you just never know, right? That person may know one person that may be able to help you, but at least just building a relationship, genuinely wanting to know people, understand some of their struggles, their wins. And people love to talk about themselves, right? And then you may be able to connect with one or two things with them, and then if you see an article that speaks to what they're working on, you can share with them, like, oh, I found this article that was
Mhm.
highlighting about this and this, I thought it may be helpful to you. And then, I mean, senior leaders appreciate those kind of things because they don't get that much from people. They're always getting people to take from them, right?
Mhm.
And then you see someone that is just kind of sending them resources that can help them with their business. I saw this Harvard Business Review that was talking about something around leaders, and you send it to them. They feel good about it. They even share with some of their their direct reports as well. So things like that are helpful. How can I be able to help you with some of your work or things that you're doing, what project you're working on currently, like that. Those are ways that you may build relationship with people at the end of the day.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think like as Nigerians and people that went to school in Nigeria, particularly like secondary school, because that's where I stopped in Nigeria. But like they don't focus on teaching us those like soft skills. You get what I mean? Like it's like, oh yeah, your books, your grades, your A, your B's will always speak for you. But it's like it can only get you so far. Like you need to be able to know how to like liaise with people,
Mhm.
teamwork, team building, all of this stuff. And for me, it was coming abroad. Like I'm going to school. Like you be put on projects with people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you and three other random people in the class are on a project." Like,
Mhm.
okay, how do we navigate this? So I think that that's something maybe even our generation now with us raising children, the soft skills, like those people skills and being able to network and sell yourself, that's something we need to focus on because sometimes that is what can make or break your career in a lot
Mhm.
of instances. And in the networking, like you just mentioned, Dr. Wale, it seems like those are the key things, right? Like how can you make somebody that is you want to be your mentor, your sponsor, see you as useful? Because it has to be a symbiotic relationship. I need to feel like I'm giving you, but I'm also, getting something from you. So that's maybe an area of improvement for all of us, particularly as
Even me,
Nigerians.
self,
And
I
do
need
better.
to.
Exactly.
As Dr.
I'm doing
Wale was saying it, I was
exactly
like, oh my god,
that.
I need to actually start doing this shit. Because I remember, like, when I was trying to find a job, I was doing that a lot. But now I'm like, okay, maybe I'm now in that phase where, I feel kind of more comfortable. But I'm like, I actually still need to go to that, like, oh, reach out to all those people, like, oh, what's going on? See, because I'm always seeing them doing stuff, right? They just closed this deal, they did this transaction. I'm like, oh, it's always nice to feel the machines of your friendship, your professional relationships.
Yeah.
It's not always take, take, take. So
Yeah,
I need
keep
to
a pulse
do
on
that
everybody
actually.
and everything that's going on. No, definitely.
Hmm.
That's definitely good. Okay.
And then the only thing I also wanted to add to that is that, especially in some industries where your promotion and your growth, oftentimes, as much as you think it's hard work, a lot of it is always relationship based.
Mm,
And then somebody being able to kind of speak up for you or recommend you or put you there
Hmm.
rightly, right? So that's why it's important to do that and get to know those people and, be more strategic with your relationship that you're building, right? And that's why, I mean, you have to be intentional to the point earlier on, if you have to kind of block out certain days within your calendar and say, this one is just for networking and just checking it. 30 minutes, 45 minutes, just seeing how they're doing and just getting advice and all of that. And, stylishly kind of talking about the things that you're working on currently, getting the advice on it and all of that. That way they know that, oh, this person has done this, has done that. And then they know the kind of interest that you have. And so when there's an
mm-hmm.
opportunity to say, oh, this person is interested in moving outside of the US to, for example, lead a different market, wants to be in the EMEA, and there's an opportunity for that, they think about you for that role. But because they know where your interest lies, they know what you're currently working on, they know the kind of things that you're able to do.
Hmm.
Yeah, that
And then when
makes a
they do
lot of
like
sense.
performance review and you are not in that room, but not just one person is talking about you, not only your boss is talking about you, like three, four other people are saying, oh, Simon, that's a great guy. He did this, he's that, it just makes your life a lot easier.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, one more thing. Sorry, I said that was last. One thing I had on in this, like, I guess the last 2 years, there's been a lot of talk about like DI, like what's that thing where people feel I think we're talking about it last week where we're like, oh, because of we're black people, sometimes you're the only Nigerian in the room, you kind of feel like, oh, out of place. There's a word for it or whatever they call that.
Imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome. We're talking about that last week. Or you don't feel you can't connect with like other people. Sometimes that's challenges people face and they overthink it. It blocks their like growth or ability to, you know, build relationships with everyone. But I mean, I just wanted to get your take on like the whole DI mindset and everything that's been going on in the last 2 years. Have you seen it really impact people? Like, what's your advice generally to like people that are in your industry, at least on this?
Yeah, no, I think that there are many ways to think about it. So it's a lot easier sometimes when you find someone that looks like you,
Hmm.
that is in a leadership position. So the first thing that does to you, that it gives you the confidence to feel that, you know what, this person looks like me. He's currently a VP. Someday I can also be a VP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if that person is well respected and all of that. So there's what that does in general because it gives you a sense of belonging. and they feel that, you know what, if I work hard and do the right things, I can also get there. But if you're in a place where, you know, nobody looks like you in certain leadership roles, right? And it feels like, you know what, you have to be a certain, you know, color, or, you know, in before you can get to a certain role, and you don't know if it's because people are being discriminatory on that angle and all of that. That's why you're not getting to that. It becomes a little challenging for you, and you start thinking, maybe, you know what, you want to go to other places where you can feel that you're they are inclusive and all of that, right? Basically. However, I also think that it's important that we, as much as possible, not also narrow our mind based on, you know, these
Mhm.
thoughts, right? I think it's important that you see everyone as an individual, regardless of race or gender or whatever it is, right? And just think about them as a person first. That person has a family, has, you know, interests, has things and all of that. And that's how you kind of see past all of those things and just build, you know, core relationship with them as much as possible. We, you know, work. We need to get the work done, and it doesn't matter. I don't see you whether you're white or you're black. I just need to get the
Mhm.
work done, right? And then if we have to kind of work together to kind of get this, I want to be your friend. I want to understand what I need to do, or what we need to do together to be able to get what we want. You know, and with that, you know, you'll be surprised. I've talked about a lot of mentors that have helped me that are not even, you know, blacks, right?
Mhm.
And have been able to kind of speak to some of the work that I do and say, you know what, I think this person deserves this, or this person should get that. And I think that that's because, you know, you have to be willing to see past, you know, all of those things and just get to what you want, right? Because first you need to get that seat on the table before you start to be able to, you know, get other people in as well and start talking
Mhm.
about inclusion and all of that too. So I think we have to be strategic and be thoughtful about, you know, how we handle that whole piece.
Yeah. I think even sometimes in our personal small, I'm not a big boy like Dr. Wiley, but
Same
in my
here.
small in my small habits, like I am when I like see other Nigerians who are like trying to break into, I mean, energy, are trying to break into our energy. I'm always on the lookout for them, trying to be like, oh, here's what we can do, here's what you should do, here are some resources you need, here's how you should think about it. Don't worry about your name, all these things. Here's what you should do. And I think as I personally am always on the lookout to help. I know this is bad, other Nigerians or other Africans who are, coming through the pipeline. I'm trying to make them feel like, don't worry about like, oh, you are the only black person. You are the only Emeka in a room of 1,000 people. You'll be fine. It'll be okay. Just worry about building your own skills and making yourself sure and never letting your voice be dim. So
Mhm.
that's what I'd say from time to time. But again, this is what it is.
Yeah, it is
Vance,
what it is.
something.
It is what it is at the end of the day, right? And I think that just as Nigerians that are immigrating, I think what helps me is a lot of times, like I already go in there with the mindset of, oh, more chances they see you're the only one that is here already. And I think that already just helps and prepares you to be able to be like, okay, this is what I want to do. I focus more on what I can control and leave the things that I can't control to the other people, right? So what I can control is how I show up, how I am perceived, right? Like what I put out, making sure that, okay, if they want to talk about, oh, people are hardworking and whatever, my name is on that list. They want to talk about people that are
Mhm.
contributing, my name is on that list. They want to see people that can get the job done, no matter, my name is on that list. All the other things, whether I'm the only black person there, I'm the only Nigerian there, only person of color there, I think it's just part of the course. And throughout university, actually, I think in my program, because my program was very, very small, there were like only two black people. I was the only Nigerian. So, you just gotta do what you gotta do. Strap on your boots and just keep pushing. So that's my own 2 cents on that regard.
Yeah, and then gradually, to your point earlier on, once you get in an organization, you can gradually start to contribute towards that change and mindset, right? You can bring a
Mhm.
business case around it, the importance of
Mhm.
diversity, equity, inclusion, and things like that, right? And
Mhm.
then you can start to get the support that you need. So we started, like, for example, um, going into certain schools, right? The
Sure.
community to kind of get certain individuals that are blacks, for example. So we had like the PharmD
Mhm.
fellowship or the PhD fellows, right? And they were mostly targeted, right, to those institutions where we know we'll be able to attract such talent and just increase our pipeline of diverse candidates. When I first started in in the first company I worked, I remember I was in a room and we were like 75 of us, and I was the only black guy. But again, over time, those things have changed, right? Because it
Entrepreneurship.
started to make that business case around it. I started to volunteer to go to National Black and be like, you know what, I want to be part of that interview panel, helping to attract the right candidates. And gradually, you know, you're getting more people that are smart, intelligent, you know, within your organization and within the company, right? As well, you know, being able to kind of support. And gradually, there's been a case to that. I remember one time I was talking to one of the senior leaders, our VP within the company, and I was saying that, you know, expressing that I hadn't seen someone that looked like me in a particular role that I thought would be nice. And I was like, you know, I think we should is important. I was pointing to another guy who was also in Nigeria, and that, you know, this guy has been here for like almost 15 years, and it feels like he and I are in the same kind of band. This guy deserves, you know, and gradually that guy became, while I was there, became a group medical lead. And, you know, just last week he was telling me, he called me on the phone that I left. It was like, you know what, I just got promoted to the medical head, and you were the first person I wanted to call because I know how much you pushed to get this thing to happen and all of that. So again, my point is that when you have that seat on the table, then you can then, you know, be an
Speak
advocate
for
for
others,
others to be able
yes.
to kind of come along as well, and you'll be able to softly push, you know, the narrative, and gradually you're gonna start seeing the changes that you desire and want to see.
Yeah, that's for
Agreed.
sure. Okay, so I'm going to quickly take us back, right? So we've talked about America, we've talked about succeeding in America, networking, all of that. Beautiful. I want us to quickly go back to your time in Nigeria. I feel like there's a lot of meat and potatoes in like just practicing medicine in Nigeria that we've kind of gone over, right? So what I'm trying to find the best way to put this. What was your experience like practicing medicine in Nigeria? Like we hear a lot of it online. I think Aproko Doctor just did a video. I don't
No
know if you follow
light.
him, Dr. Wale, where he went to like a primary health care center, and the state of the let's know. I don't want to believe that people are having their children there, but people are having their children in those kind of facilities. What was your experience practicing in Nigeria? And luckily, you did work in one of like a
You work
primary
in the
health care
primary
center.
healthcare, right? I
So
see.
what was your experience like?
So yeah, interesting question. So I had both the good and the bad and the ugly kind of experience. So first of all, I also worked in a private hospital for like a lot of years. It was one of the best hospitals in Lagos at the time. It's called Ave Maria Hospital. It was right on Adetokunbo Ademola in Victoria Island. So I saw a lot of the high network individuals in Nigeria at that hospital. Got to know a lot of people from that hospital. There were a lot of companies that oil and gas, whatever it is, that were, or embassies that were affiliated with that hospital. So I did, you know, see what good looked like, you know, in that particular hospital. And it's interesting that, you know, a lot of the providers that we had at that hospital, specialists, were also people from the government hospitals. So that's another conversation another day, you know, kind of talking about how from a, you know, human resource standpoint and all of that. So why it feels like a lot of these government providers are not giving their best, but when they go to these private hospitals, they go above and beyond, right? Because, you know, you're in this government hospital where you work, and at the end of every month, maybe they're paying you 1 million or so, for example. And then you go to this private hospital, they just call you for one case just to do one orthopedic surgery, and you're done. They give you that same 1 million. So it just tells you who you're going to make yourself
Your
available for. But
loyalty,
again,
yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
different conversation. But I also work with the government. So first did my house job in military hospital. I remember one night where, you know, I had a patient who had, you know, HIV and had hepatitis B. She was primary, which was her first pregnancy. She was going to be delivering the baby. And so typically the nurses in the hospital would do what we call episiotomy and just cut up, and then the doctor would be the one to suture and all of that afterwards. And so in this particular scenario, there was no light in the hospital. So I was going to use Nantan in the event that they took that baby out and they did do an episiotomy. I would have to be the one to kind of do that repair and all of that, right? So I had pushed back with the nurses on duty and said, this woman has to give birth like an Hebrew woman, no, because it's not me that you know, would go back there and be trying to do this with this lantern, with all of this condition, not trying to stigmatize the patient, but just thinking about the
The
issues
safety
that
of
may arise
everybody
from it, that we
involved.
have to be
Yeah.
as careful as possible in doing this, because knowing fully well that there's again some form of, you know, risk associated with this. So that's that part. And also in even the government hospitals, a lot of them, you know, you have no equipment, patients cannot afford stuff. So even sometimes I'm the one buying the drugs at the end of the day, you know, for patients, or buying the equipment that you need and all of that. Yes, for the patients. And, you know, imagine being in a room where there is no ventilation, right? And the patient comes in with tuberculosis, for example, literally coughing in your face. So those are the kind of things that you have to kind of deal with, unfortunately, as a healthcare provider. You can go on and on and on about the horrible experiences. I'm sure if you ask other Nigerian doctors as well, and they can speak to some of their experiences. So I think things are getting better gradually. I know that the state government at the time invested in renovating all of the primary healthcare centers at the core local government and primary healthcare development agencies. But again, that is in Lagos. Let's not talk about what's happening in all of the other
Mhm.
Well,
states.
let's talk about the other states.
You understand? So you understand what I'm saying? So just imagine
Mhm.
how crazy it is in those other states as well. So I think that there's a lot that needs to be done. And I think we're still far from where we should go. And I'm hoping that, government will prioritize this thing and, start to engage private sector as well into some of these things.
What would you say if you were to just taking a step back and look at it and be like, okay, here are the issues. Like personnel, it sounds like there's a personnel. At least you said they tried to move you 3 hours away from your
Yeah.
like personnel. It sounds like there could be personnel issues. The other day I was reading that a lot of doctors are leaving Nigeria. Infrastructure, obviously, no light. What would you say if you could try and summarize, I know it could take all days, but like what you see as like the bigger issues or the biggest issues that are really affecting like healthcare in Nigeria right now, or at least.
I think one is personnel from a human resource standpoint as well. Even though we're having a lot of doctors going out, we don't even have enough of them to begin with.
Hmm.
And if you think about the barrier to entry into medical school and all of these things as well that we kind of put in space is also very, very challenging, right? So that's why it's almost like, oh, you're studying medicine, it's like a big deal. And then at the end of the day, you don't even have enough of them. And almost half of them, as at the time I was leaving, were already out of the country, right? And that's not to even talk about people that are dead or people that have retired, right? So I
Mhm.
think that's still a big challenge. And I think that it's important that we're training more providers. And then, think about it, it's just really unfortunate because healthcare education in Nigeria is pretty cheap, right? So, you go through the whole medical school, you're paying almost nothing, excluding the private universities, right? And then Nigeria loses that talent because Nigeria is subsidizing that education, and then we lose that talent to the UK. And that person getting well paid, or the US, they're getting
Mhm.
well paid. They don't have to bother about student loan and all of that. So I think that there is a gap there that we need to start thinking about how do we address this gap, right? Again, um, ideas around training more people and maybe having some form of commitment to, providing healthcare for a couple of years before moving or whatever that looks like. That's one part. The other part is also from a place of resources. I think there's a lot of gap within that space. And then government can't do it alone. Clearly, they're not prioritizing investment in healthcare. I think per the UN, there was a particular percentage of amount that, from the budget that should be allocated to healthcare. I think it was 8% or so thereabout. I know that we are far from it
Hmm.
from a country perspective. And so I think that if we can meet some of those needs as well, how are we getting other private individuals
Mhm.
to get invested in this space? I mean, some individuals can own a secondary healthcare facility because healthcare business is really business indeed, right? Because think about it. I give the example of when I worked in a military hospital where my consultant that was an orthopedic surgeon at some point in time would go to a private hospital and go and operate in that particular institution and get paid, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions, right? That was his salary in a month, or probably even more than a salary in a month. Or I had another guy who was a gynecologist in that government hospital who had a private hospital of his own at the back of the hospital and would divert certain patients there. So you have a lot of those kind of, craziness going on. So I think that, thinking about how do we make that military hospital or Lagos University Teaching Hospital or the Agege General Hospital compete with your Reddingtons and your Evercares of this world, right?
Okay, yeah.
You know that not all patients can afford that, but is there a way we can segment patients? So there's also like a VIP kind of section in that space for some providers that can afford it. Because trust me, those big private hospitals too, they are also leveraging the consultant that is within the government hospital. So that
Mm-hmm.
consultant does not necessarily need to leave to go and it not doesn't have to be incentivized to go outside of that institution to provide care. He can provide same care in that same health system and be able to get that money that you'll probably be
Into the
getting within that other
system.
particular place. So how do we make sure that providers maybe are paid by the numbers of patients they see or whatever things like that kind of incentivize them to do the work too as well? I think that's another aspect that we can think through as well. And then, of course, there's a lot of investment that we can see. I know Evercare was almost like if I remember, I think it was 1 or 10 billion 10 billion, investment with, I'm trying to remember the name of this healthcare venture capital firm that had invested. I think it was Afri Invest, or one of those that had put a lot of money into building that, institution. So there are folks that are willing to invest as well. But I'm thinking that there's some form of, public-private partnership that may be able to address some
Yeah.
of that. We want to see people also think about Nigeria as, a place to go to for medical tourism. We have the personnel, can we build on the resources, right? That may be able to make that place a center of attraction, right? For people who have cancer in Nigeria, there are many of them that want to go outside of the country. Can there be certain states that, Osun State is, for example, known as the cancer capital of care capital of Nigeria, for example, or another institution is known for like orthopedic surgeries or something like that. I know those days we used to have Igbobi as that having that reputation. I don't know if
I
that's
don't know
the
if they still
whole
do
stay,
that.
right? Kind of building some specialized institutions that people know about and people from other places want to come to because they know they will get the best of care there, and then they can invest those resources in that place. When I worked at Penn as a 2017 or so, I was so intrigued that the revenue from that one hospital was $8 billion, was almost half of the whole Nigerian budget. Right. So how do we start to position ourselves again into that particular kind of category and all of that to be able to generate resources that can use to generate revenue that can improve the resources that we need within the institution to be able to cater to the healthcare needs of the people?
Yeah.
I like something that you said, right? Where you didn't focus on just Lagos. You said like Osun State can be like the cancer capital of the nation, and I don't know, maybe Port Harcourt can be the fertility. And I think that there's a huge market when it comes to medicine in Nigeria, and there's a way that we can spread it where every part of the nation can get a piece of the pie, which is very important to, in my opinion, to the development of Nigeria as a whole country. I think a lot of times every investments are typically heavily focused on Lagos,
Lagos, Abuja.
maybe Abuja, maybe Port Harcourt if they try, but like everybody's trying to get into Lagos, but it's like in fact, your money that you're investing could go further if you're willing to go outside of Lagos. The
Yep.
land alone that you're looking for that you can't find in Lagos, if you just went to border states or your state or Ogun State, you most likely will get 3-4 times that amount of land for the money that you want to spend. So definitely something I know. Fertility tourism is picking up in
That's a good
Nigeria.
one. I hear
Right?
Nigerians are doing well in fertility.
In fact, I know somebody here that is a Caribbean that went to Nigeria to do her IVF just because it was cheaper. The success rates are like way,
Is it
way
just because
higher.
Nigerians want children? Why did that happen all of a sudden?
No, but IVF is a thing. Not to your point, which is really good. I mean, it's a thing that people desire, right? For if you've been trying to have kids, you've been married for a year, and you guys live together, and unable
Down
to
to
have a child
Shiloh.
within that year, and then you start to think about how do you what are all your chances and what are the options that you have, right? So, and again, in America, it's really expensive. For people that have insurance, maybe it's still fair enough, but for those that maybe don't, or they still have to pay some amount of money, they can think about it that, in Nigeria is way cheaper for them. And to your point, that may be a good option for them. And that's why you see, I have a friend as well that's also exploring going to Nigeria to do that too.
Yeah, I'm personally on a personal level, like I'm actually thinking of freezing my eggs, but here it's ridiculously expensive. But in Nigeria, there are options, right, that are when you compare, of course, the dollar to the naira ratio and all of that, it just sounds like a way cheaper deal to be able to say, okay, I'm going to Nigeria and I'm doing this and this is that. And I know people will say, oh, what about NEPA, power supply, all of these things and whatever, whatever. Trust me, those hospitals have those things under control. They know what they are doing when it comes to that department. So it will be a good thing if we can definitely expand in terms of like healthcare research. Like how much is the government willing to invest in even cancer research? For the example, there's a Mariam Babangida cancer, women, breast cancer, whatever, whatever. How much is the government spending on that? We don't even have proper, and Nigeria can also become like a biobank for like Africa, for like black people, right? We have so many people and we go through so many things where we can, I don't want to call it harvesting the like whatever, but like we
Research.
we can keep all of those data from research. So there's definitely a lot of potential in that department. I think the government just needs to meet the private investors halfway. They need to have confidence in the government to be able to bring in the money. And that seems to be the biggest disconnect with Nigeria at the moment across boards.
You're spot on that. And if you think about the IVF, space that you talked about earlier on, it's mostly the private sector players that are, thriving in this space. That's where people are going to. So again, it just kind of goes back to that importance of, partnering and, leveraging with private sector individual, or even pushing those healthcare systems in Nigeria to do that. Because I think that government should probably start reducing funding these big tertiary institutions. Lutz can be able to generate their own money. By the time you start pushing the boundaries, people become very innovative and
Mm-hmm.
start thinking about how they can also make their own center a center of excellence in certain areas, right? With their providers and all of that. But people have become very comfortable. And I think that's probably one of the challenge that we're having. You talked about research. The pharma world invests billions of dollars in research to bring in new therapies to market. When you look at a lot of this data, right, that get presented, very few of those trial population are blacks. And even those few blacks, they're probably picking them up from the US here. Whereas the trial is drawn across Europe, drawn across Asia in certain instances, but almost nothing is done. So we're bereft of opportunities to even bring new innovative therapies to our patients in form of clinical trials. Right. And how we positioning ourselves to that, right? Because they want to work with you, but they can't even trust the data that you're bringing out or you're generating because you know that maybe one thing had
Exactly.
happened or maybe the treatment wasn't given the right way, things like that. And I think it's important that we're positioning ourselves. We have the largest population of black people, right? And how do we position ourselves rightly to be able to take advantage of that, of the resources with private sectors as well?
Okay.
Nigerian government, come and hire us. Consulting fee. Very
Not
cheap.
to make everything look too bleak. I mean, we mentioned some good bright spots, IVF. I've heard of that as well. I had a friend who she did give birth in the US, but it was only cost of, let's not talk about that. But like, um, the reason we know, but like, it's not like fertility I hear, like the fertility practice in Nigeria here is pretty good. Are there any like bright spots that you're aware of seeing like that? Okay, Nigeria's actually doing well in this. Maybe it needs a bit more, massaging or things or investments, but like things are actually on the up. At
I
least.
think Simmons. I think Nigeria healthcare it it can be better, and I think that generally, I think we're good. We have really, really, really smart physicians. When they go abroad, they're like literally one of the best. They're really good. They're smart. But I think that it's just that we need to do a lot better from making sure that we're maintaining our healthcare institutions. We're training our healthcare providers as well about like newer therapies and all of that. Um, I think it's critical, and I think it's also important that we're collaborating, across board and all of that. But I think that generally, I think even if you think about, the psychiatry ward, you think about the oncology piece, I think we're doing well, but I think there's still a lot of gap and there's a lot of opportunities. I think generally we're smart folks, really, and I think it's just that we need a lot more government support and funding and the private sector components into these things as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's
That
at
makes
least
a
it's
lot
not
of
as bad
sense.
as we as we.
Yeah. Maybe there's
But
maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel. Who knows?
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
it's when we get to that tunnel that we don't know.
Let's zoom out of all this like
Mm.
serious stuff. Let's talk about like okay, a bit more personal. Because one thing we hear the lay people, we hear about people in healthcare, they are dying on the line all the time. They basically don't see their children. They're always out in the hospital. Like, what was your experience as per? Like, I know you're a family man. Is that like how have you been
Family
able
man.
to
That sounds so
manage?
Nigerian. You're a family
But he's a family
man.
man.
You're a family man regardless of whether you're married or not. So you belong to one family. Somebody owns you.
I've never heard a white person be like, "Oh yeah, I know you're a family
Yeah, a
man,"
family
or
man
"That's
now.
a family." It's so Nigerian.
Okay, I mean, I guess where I'm going is like work-life balance. How have you been able to manage your? You mentioned like 20 million things you were doing in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Now you're doing another 30 million things here. How have you been able to manage like being a father, a good partner, and your, very, very well blooming career?
Yeah, I think it's important that you have priorities, right? And being able to kind of create that balance between work and your family as well. And you have to be intentional because again, if you
Mhm.
don't create boundaries, people will take advantage of it. So, for example, and you also have to show that, either as the leader or even as, a worker reporting to people, and the way you kind of project yourself, right? Like, people know that after 5 p.m., you don't respond to email. They know that this person is not going to respond until the next morning, right? No matter what is falling, except you're at a business meeting, for example. So just making sure that you're intentional about your timing. And then this is time for my family. You kind of maybe have a routine where you're like, twice every week or 3 times every week we're playing tennis together, we're doing something together with your spouse, for example, or this is a time you have with your kids, or like your weekends are, out of the way and all that kind of stuff, right? So I think it's important to kind of build that routine and be intentional about it. Otherwise, you just get swayed in different directions. And so over time, when people realize that, this person doesn't respond to emails or doesn't send emails at certain times, or doesn't even look at their email over the weekend, they know that they create that boundary, right? And again, at the end of the day, that's what you're paid to do. Now,
Mhm.
as a provider, as a physician, I think it may be a different story for them, because again, depending on the specialty, some people work around the clock and do all of that to be in the hospital with patient. It may be a struggle for them. And so that's why it's also important to having the right partner that understands your work, understands what you're doing, and is able to be there with the kids and the family. So I think at the end of the day, it's important to be able to strive that.
Mhm.
My work sometimes get really busy, but I've been so really blessed with a wife that is able to also help, you know, take care of the kids and the family, and make sure that we're all good from that angle. So I can focus on certain things that I'm doing,
Mhm.
and she has that flexibility to kind of do a lot of stuff. In Nigeria, then I think there was a time I had like 4 jobs, so it was really crazy. Um,
How do you
yeah,
manage it?
it was crazy. So I
Osla.
would I remember on Monday morning, then I was working with colleagues. I would leave Lagos because I would in charge of Southwest. I'll start with like maybe Oyo State or Osun State and Ondo State, and then Wednesday evening I'm back to Lagos. Then I'm in the hospital on Wednesday night. That was my private hospital then. Then on Thursday morning I will be at Cool FM writing the scripts and all of that for my show on Friday. And when I leave there, I will go to the government hospital. It was just a whole lot all over the place. And then I knew that there was no way I could be married and be able to sustain the kind of lifestyle that I was living.
Yeah.
It was just a lot at that point in time. But over time, as you get stable and get better, right? And then you just realize that, what's more important for you is to kind
Mhm.
of create that stability for yourself and your family and your own mental health at the end of the day. Because otherwise you just overwork yourself. Money is not everything. And it's important that you're happy, you're content, and you're able to kind of get the key things that you need for yourself, and you're good.
Okay,
Yeah.
let
I
me
have to
as
give
a
it
as
to
a guy.
Dr. I have to give it to Dr. Wale. This man can balance. He can juggle all the balls. Dr. Wale, how far? Oh, senior baby girl, I just went to Atlanta. My friend is doing this. Senior baby girl, I went to pharmacy ball, this. And I'm just like, next thing you call him, oh yeah, I'm with the kids, we're doing this, we're doing that. Oh, me and the wife are doing this. He'll still do church, on top of all of this. On top
Yes.
of all of this.
Are
I
you able
told
to
him
sleep like
the
this?
other day.
Can you
I had to
sleep?
tell him the other day. I said, Dr. Ali, your ability to show up for every aspect of your life, I admire it bad. Like, he shows up for his friends. He will show up for his family. He will show up for church. That I was scrolling on Twitter, on Instagram the other day. I saw him doing church video. I said, God, where does this man get the time and the energy? Like, what is going on? He's so present in every aspect. And I think that is a gift that some people just have. Like, they effortlessly are able
Mm.
to juggle a lot of balls. And I think he's one of those people that he just can't juggle a lot of balls. And not just in juggling of balls, like when he's there, he shows up, like he's present and he's involved. So shout out to you, man, because bro, I'd be tired by Friday. So
Avec.
I don't
Dr.
know.
Wale, avec, cut that soap, give me avec, cause
Yeah, no. Don't be correct. So you go one need that balance, make you feel rest and ignore certain things. No, but thank you. I appreciate it. It's also it's a lot. It could be a lot, to be honest. At the end of the day, you're covering a lot. I also chair the American Longer Station Board in Philadelphia. So sometimes as well, and I've been out of that city for like almost 3-4 years.
you see the drum.
But I still dey run now. It's just this year I got to tell them, say, you know what, by next year I'm not
Yeah.
doing this again. Things like
Yeah.
that.
So
So there
that
are
means
certain
that
things
means
that can just
you
be.
commute from MD to Philadelphia a lot.
Yes,
I don't
yeah.
know. I don't
How
know
are
how
you
they
able
do
to
it.
are you able to sleep?
Shout out to you.
We try. We're still when it's time to sleep, we kind of get on it and just
We have to
get the rest that you
make
need, right?
even time to come and do this with us, safe. Like this hour that you have given us, we're like super grateful for it because I know you are super busy.
No, I
Because
appreciate it. I appreciate it. I'm thrilled to be here. Vanessa cannot call me and I say no. She'll tell me I want you to jump. I'll be like, how high?
Thank you
Well,
so
we have
much
to
for
thank you
being
so
here.
much
No,
for this.
for
This was
real.
like a super outstanding like episode. We're really, really glad that you came up. You came
Yeah,
through for us. Like we cannot
I
say thank
really enjoyed it. I
I
think it
Thank
super
you. I
just,
enjoyed the conversation as well. Thank you
yeah,
for
it
all
just
you
shows
guys are
us that.
doing, and this is really cool.
Yes, no. It just shows us that a lot we can be a lot of things. We don't have to be one thing. What you
Mhm.
start off with is not what you need to end up
Mhm.
doing for the rest of your life. And it doesn't have to be drastic. It can be in very little variations or degrees of separations. But we're multi potential like human beings just in general. So where the peg fits, that's where I'll plug it at the moment. And if it does not fit again, please feel free to disconnect the plug and look for where else is going to go into and all that. This was very insightful. Thank you so
Mhm.
much for sharing your background, like your experiences. And I'm positive and I'm hopeful that it will help somebody else out there who is trying to figure out, if this
Their
is
life.
the if this is the way for me, this is life for me. You can study medicine and decide that you no longer want to be a medicine. It's very okay as
Mhm.
long as that's what you want, and life will do its thing. Me, I shall want to start earning 7 million. So I think Dr. Wale has been
That's
on
way to
my
7 million that Dr. Wale.
Dr. Wale has been on my back to go and do this MBA. He's every time he'll be like, how far this
Better go and
MBA?
do
How far
it
this-"
now.
So maybe
Now
me
you
now I
heard
need to
it.
start this my MBA and I need to do it in healthcare because
That's where the money is.
clearly that's where the money lives, So
But
that's where the
that
money
being
lives
said,
and it makes sense.
thank you so much. This has really been a great episode. And we're really glad that you came through. Like this was like I'm telling you, widely requested, and you ate and left no scrubs, no scrubs whatsoever. So thank you so much. Thanks, Vanessa. Do you have anything else before we sign off?
No, I don't have anything else. So I don't have anything else. I think this is a very insightful episode. So
Mhm.
we're trying to be consistent. So let's go. This is our second episode of the season. So let's see how far we can keep going. Like I said on the last episode, if you do have people that you want to see or hear from on the podcast, definitely shoot us a message or let us know. You can message myself, Shimon, already, or the three commoners on Instagram and let us know. We'll do our best to get them on here and have a little chat with them. But thank you again, Dr. Wali. Very much
Thanks,
appreciated.
everyone.
No, my pleasure. You guys are doing phenomenal, and I see this going even greater, man. Thank you so much for picking up the call and
Amen.
deciding to do this and start this. This
Amen.
is really impressive.
Amen.
All right.
Yes.
With
Thank you
that, we
so
can
much.
end. I'm going to do my laugh track, and everyone's going to be like, "No, Shaman." So, but like,
Thank you.
all
All
right.
right.
Bye,
Thank you
bye,
so
guys.
much. All right. Bye.